this is where we discuss the possibilities.
Hi guys, I'm Joe Klimczewski, founder of The Diet Doc, here with Dr. Kori Probst, our wellness director and health psychologist. Today, Kori, I wanted to wrap up our series. I don't even know if we formally called it a series on meal. And it's not even specifically meal planning. It was just looking at the structure of meals, the why and the how and the what of exactly what your body needs at different intervals. So we specifically started with pre-workout and post-workout meals because I contend that those are most important for people in terms of merging their physical goals, anything to do with fitness, with just their body composition or weight loss, those kind of goals. So those were important. I'm not going to rehash all of that. You guys, in the previous couple of podcasts, we've mixed in one on meal prep with Brittany Garcia. Then we even had a coaching clinic in there. So in the last 4 or 5, you're going to see these threaded in there in our macro mastery category. So Kori, this is what I want to do. You tell me if you're ready for this.
Yep.
We've got meal prep in there, but we also have pre-workout, post-workout meals. Now I just want to basically talk about the rest of your day because it can really be that eclectic, how you decide to structure your meals.
Sure. Sounds fun.
So give me your perception. What are your goals personally and as a nutrition consultant? If somebody asks you, how do I create a meal plan? How many meals a day do I need? What should each of those meals constitute? And how do I get this whole thing rolling?
So I always start out with, there's no one right way to structure your day. It needs to be very individualized to you based on your schedule and your hunger levels. And so as a coach, it helps me to understand, first of all, what are you doing currently? What does your current day look like? How many meals are you having, meals and snacks? Are there certain times of the day when you struggle with hunger more than at other times of the day? Do you like to snack? Are there certain times of the day when you find yourself engaging in maybe emotional eating, or you're tired? Is it at the end of the day when you're home from work and you're sitting in front of the TV? Do you just want to keep snacking? When do you work out? Are you working out? And if you are, when are you doing that? What's the intensity level? So I'm getting a sense of current structure, hunger levels, energy levels, difficulty in terms of stress or emotional eating, and then exercise times. So that then I can help this person put together an optimal plan for them. And it literally, though, it's an experiment to see if it changes things for them and how it feels and works and how effective it is.
So, of course, I think that's a perfect place to start in terms of gathering that information. But I'm going to play devil's advocate for a moment.
Okay.
And say, okay, I'm your client, and I've just purged all that information that you asked for. But maybe, Dr. Probst, all of the things I just told you are why I'm where I am, and I just need you to tell me how to eat.
Okay.
So what if I'm willing to throw all of that away?
Yep.
Here are all my habits, here are my preferences, and now I just want you to tell me how to eat. What would you prescribe at that point?
So pre-workout and post-workout, here's what you're going to have. Pre-workout, you're going to have primarily an easily digestible carbohydrate source. Okay, here's my suggestion. Here's what I do. I have 2 rice cakes with 5 grams of peanut butter on each rice cake. Okay.
What if I don't want to do that? What if I feel better without food?
Okay. Then you don't need to eat. This is Kori being the yes man. You don't need to eat. How about we have some branched chain amino acids? You can sip on those before your workout and even during your workout. Then you don't have anything, in your gut. You don't feel super heavy going into your training session. So now let's talk about post-workout. Okay. Well, first I want to know when you work out, because your post-workout could be your breakfast, or your post-workout could be your dinner, or your post-workout could be your lunch. You may not need a separate post-workout. One of those meals could serve as your post-workout meal. And same as your pre-workout too. See, this is where it gets a little hairy. I need some details, Joe.
That's good. That's good. And that's a good review of what we talked about with the pre and the post-workout. Let me throw out another piece of information, a little bit of a platform, and then you can continue. As I was reviewing for this series, I ran across some terminology that I've forgotten about and I just love. And, you know, you've heard me for more than a decade talk about how your body will handle fat intake, your dietary fat, and basically almost, you know, all the food you consume based on the carbohydrate economy. So, you know, we talk about metabolic positioning. And if your body is fully glycogenated, I don't actually think that's a term, but
I like it.
your glycogen levels are saturated, liver, muscle tissue, blood sugar stable, you're having regular intervals for meals. So you could say that that tank is full. Then your body is more likely to store anything you consume as fat because there's just nowhere to put it.
Okay.
But if your carbohydrate levels in your body are a little bit lower, you're a little bit depleted, you've been in a calorie deficit, then you're more apt to convert some of those carbohydrates you consume into stored glycogen, and less of it will be stored as fat. And on down the line, you get into a total ketosis state.
Okay.
But everything happens in light of that internal carbohydrate economy. So you have to know your status there. And if you extrapolate that out to just the day that you're in right now, it's 11 in the morning or it's 3 in the afternoon, it's dinner time, it's important for you to know exactly the status of your internal carbohydrate economy. How long has it been since my previous meal? Did I have carbohydrates at that time? How many grams of carbohydrates have I had today? How many overall calories? As you said, did I work out this morning or did I not? So now that we're in that context of talking about that status, what would you tell the client in terms of, you got your pre-workout, your post-workout set. Now here's what I want you to think about for the rest of your day and how your meals might help you best.
Well, okay. So let's think about dinner. Dinner for most people, it's an important meal. Sometimes they're going to have it with their family. Sometimes they like it to be small. Let me use a client as an example. I have some who they want their dinner to be a fairly large meal. They enjoy having a starch with that meal, a fibrous carbohydrate, of some sort of veggie, and a good amount of protein. I have another client, she goes to bed at like 6 o'clock at night. Okay, wow. So she comes home from work at 4, and if she has a big meal, she's not going to sleep very well. So her final meal is not very big. It's pretty small. Other people would probably call it a snack. Her dinner is a snack. But so when she gets up in the morning and her last meal was at 5 o'clock at night, and she doesn't want to eat anything, she wants to train fasted also, then I'm thinking about, then your breakfast probably your post-workout, her breakfast will be her post-workout, should be pretty substantial. She's going to be pretty glycogen depleted at that point from not having eaten anything after 5 o'clock at night through the night, and then having trained. We're all over the place. Our vocabulary today is awesome. She is not glycogenated. And so her post-workout / breakfast should be pretty substantial. She's going to have like starchy carbohydrate, fibrous carbohydrate, and a good protein source. For the individuals who like a more substantial dinner, then that could look a little bit different. If they want that more substantial dinner, then I would say, okay, at lunchtime, perhaps then we're not eating as much or any starchy carbohydrate, and you're focusing on your protein source and your fibrous carbohydrate. So maybe it's a really nice chicken breast salad, or maybe it's a salad with a fattier protein source because your breakfast didn't have a lot of fat in it. So here's where we're getting down to, what did I eat previously? Did I have a lot of fat in my previous meal? Then I don't want necessarily as much fat in my next meal. For me, for example, my breakfast is my post-workout meal, and I have starchy carbohydrate, I have fibrous carbohydrate, I have protein source, and I have a little bit of fat in there as well. My lunch is always a salad. I'm rarely eating starch with my lunch. It's a lean protein source, a little bit of fat, and a bunch of veggies. Because at dinner then, I like to have a starch source. And I train in the morning. So that sets me up well for better performance the following day also.
So one of the things I like that you're doing is that you start with behavior, of course, because you're Dr. Kori Probst. So you're saying, what do you want to do? How do you feel at these times? What's going to work for you best? We have some flexibility. But then you merged over into the science. If you had fat here, you might not eat as much. And that's so appropriate. When people talk to me as kind of the metric of flexible dieting, I brought these principles into this industry, and now people go crazy in different directions. But a lot of times they come back to me and say, keep us on the right path. Mm-hmm. And this is what's important, is to know exactly why. We do have flexibility, and we should consider our preferences. But here's something, Kori, that I want to see if you remember this. So you and I have spoken at Lane Norton's camps, different VIP and science camps. And I think at one of our last ones, Dr. Bill Campbell, mm-hmm. The former president of the ISSN, International Society of Sports Nutrition, said that they did a literature review as an organization on meal frequency. And they said between about 2 and 7 meals a day, there's virtually no difference mm-hmm. in terms of fat gain, body composition, that kind of thing. So that was their preemptive strike, kind of supporting that intermittent fasting could be appropriate, but doesn't have to be. You can graze a little bit. You can have some more space in between there. And here's why I think, at least one of the reasons why that holds true. There have been studies done where you could take the same amount of food and eat it in one meal, yeah. or divide it up into 4 meals, or even divide it up into eating every 30 minutes until that meal is gone. And they found there is no difference in overall aggregate insulin.
Okay.
So I really do have, within bounds, I mean, you can't be stupid about it, but within a certain parameter, you really do have a lot of flexibility, and it's not going to affect your body composition. So let's start with that premise, mm-hmm. that there's not a perfect way to eat that's going to give you the maximum body fat loss or the worst body fat gain. So now we're back in your side of the court, mm-hmm. where you just get to pick. So now what would you tell your clients in terms of, we have a little bit more freedom? Mm-hmm. What's going to be most important for you as my client to stay on track and be happy with food?
So let's use my client who's a teacher, who's not going to be eating every 30 minutes in the classroom in front of her kids. That's not realistic for her lifestyle or her career. Or the pharmacist who really doesn't get any breaks at all and is probably going to have to go to the bathroom and slam a protein shake. Or the nurse in the ER, mm-hmm. who is going to maybe get to go to the bathroom and maybe get to go to the break area and, eat some nuts when she opens her locker. So for me too, I'm not going to eat every 30 minutes. Guess what? Kori's going to be hungry all freaking day if she does that. If she divides her calories up like that across the day, it's not going to work for me. Then I'm always thinking about food, and I'm always searching for the next thing that I'm going to eat.
So there are some intervals of the day where you really do want to have a little bit more substantial food, so you don't have to worry about food. And here's the interesting thing. Yeah. I talked about insulin and how there's not a big change in insulin levels when you divide food out, but there is an actual thermic effect of food. So when you do have a larger meal versus spreading out that same calorie base over time, you do get a surge of increased thermogenic activity. But there's also the other side of the coin because the carbohydrate economy you're creating, you've got more food at that time, more is going to be stored as fat or
Right.
glycogen, but to be used later.
Right.
So there's that's almost a natural, byproduct of the two things. You get that surge of thermic potential, but you're also storing it to be used as later. So, those are just two things I think that cancel each other out pretty well.
Okay, so if it cancels out, then looking at realistically what's going to be best for your behavior and your hunger levels and your energy levels, for me, I would say I prefer those fewer meals per day and more substantial meals. I'm going to feel more satisfied. Now, it depends on what's in that meal, whether the substantial meal is going to make me want to crawl under my desk and take a nap, or if it really does replenish my energy and then it's nice and stable up to the next meal. So that's then where we kind of get to experiment and play around to see what's going to work best for each client. Now, I have a question for you, though.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at let's say we're talking about someone whose goal is to lose body fat.
Mm-hmm.
Is there then a difference between 7 and 2 meals, or eating every 30 minutes versus eating every 4 hours, based on the percentage of fat that's burned?
I would answer that first by saying no, there would be no difference. But in a cumulative way, the behavior does start to stack up. So, for example, if you haven't eaten for 6 hours and you're hungry, you might gravitate toward a higher glycemic, quicker food. I made the comment the other day that my wife is so disciplined, she will go home and she's hungry, but she'll spend an hour in the kitchen making this great meal. She'll have all of this stuff made and say, hey, dinner's ready. And I have to say, well, shit, I just ate a whole bag of chips. I'm not hungry now.
Yeah.
So, and here's the thing. What studies have shown is that people who eat higher glycemic foods as a larger portion of their meals eat twice as much food. Mm-hmm. Those people who have higher density foods, I mean, and this is where, they do studies where you're unlimited. Like you can eat as much as you want, when you want, they just give you the foods. Mm-hmm. And obese people and non-obese people, it doesn't matter. When you have higher density foods, meaning more complex carbohydrates, something that's more satisfying, everybody eats almost exactly 50% less, which is very substantial. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to have more density in your meals, meaning larger meals and more time in between meals, then you've got to be disciplined to get the right food that you want. Yes. And as we talked about a couple episodes ago, to sit down, enjoy it, create those habits, which I actually did, I should mention, after you schooled me on that. My very next meal, I sat down. I never sit down to eat.
I know.
It was interesting.
Very nice. I'm proud of you.
We'll talk about that toward the end. But here's another thing that's interesting. In between meals, the hormone ghrelin is kind of a precursor to hunger. When your stomach gets empty, blood sugar is getting lower, your body produces ghrelin to increase your appetite. Mm-hmm. And what studies show is that it's very independent of what you think about food. It is a true measure of the internal environment. So if you're grazing, if you're constantly eating just a little bit of food and your body burns through that and then you're empty, blood sugar's plummeting, you're going to be hungry again. Yeah. Whereas if you have a larger meal, you're going to stave off that ghrelin increase and probably actually just feel better over time as the entire cumulative process of your dieting life. Having a larger meal or two, which is why we've put this in our books, mm-hmm. Not to be just so dogmatically spaced out and perfect, but look for that 1 or 2 meals a day that are slightly bigger. Then you can have the smaller ones to fill in the gap. That's very important hormonally.
Yeah, I definitely do that, Joe, with my own nutrition for sure. And there's something interesting that I've noticed with all of my clients in that socially speaking, like dinner time needs to be at this time because this is when everyone is home and everyone can eat together. And I love that. The part of it that I don't love is so many of my clients are ready for a substantial meal, not just a snack to tide me over until we get to dinner, but between 4 and 5 o'clock, that's I am ready. That could be their dinner time where they're having a substantial meal. And it's like, I'll just have a tiny snack to tide me over until 7 o'clock when everyone can eat together. And it's like gritting their teeth, trying to get to that time. It's really difficult for them. And I've had them do experiments too. I'm like, have your dinner at 4:30. Just try it. Just try it. Have your main meal at 4:30. And then when you sit down with the family, just have a little snack. It's really difficult. It's difficult emotionally because everyone else is eating this bigger dinner. But what they can say is, man, I felt good. I felt satisfied physically, emotionally, and socially, though it doesn't work.
Exactly.
When I was in college, and by myself, my dinner was at 4:30. I'd have my biggest meal at 4:30, and then I'd have a little snack before I would go to bed, and it worked so well because I'm studying too. Have my bigger meal a little bit early, takes me through those few hours of study time, and then it's just really interesting.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a perfect place to wrap up because there is no wrong answer to that. You know, for somebody to say, I'm going to wait and eat because dinner time is at this time, and socially that's important, I want to eat with my family and all that, that can be a time to exercise discipline where it's like, yeah, I'm going to drink some extra water, I'm just going to burn a little extra body fat, but then I have to be disciplined to stay on track at that meal. Yes. Doing how you said in terms of having a meal first and then eating lighter there, totally fine. Mm-hmm. I like what you said about experimenting, but I'm gonna close out with a little teaser, see if you get this right. So research shows that if you eat alone versus eating with a larger group of people, one of those scenarios means you will eat 75% more. Guess where you would eat more, if you're by yourself or with a large group of people?
Well, it's contextual too, because I've read the research that says, like, when you're with people, if you eat where it's really bright, you'll eat 75% less. But if you're eating in the dark, you eat more. I could go either way. I'm probably going to say my first thought was when you're with people, you'll eat more, but I don't think so. I think you're more self-conscious and monitoring. So I'm going to say when you eat alone, you eat more.
See, that's what I thought, but you were right the first time.
Okay.
When we're together, and again, I mean, I think you're right. It obviously could work either way. It depends on your personality. If you're kind of a closet eater, you're going to scarf down tons of food when you're by yourself. And then when you're with people, you're going to feel very self-conscious. But as an overall culture, we eat more with people because it's more socially celebratory, that kind of thing, typically. So just
right?
And again, that's just a little fun fact for the side. But that behavior matters. And even though we're talking about all the science, we're talking about hormones and thermogenesis and all of this, that's all fantastic if you can make it work for your behavior, your social context. Sure. And that's where it might take some time to experiment with these things. It's one of the things I love to do with clients is it's almost a lost art to actually look at somebody's meal planning, go through food source by food source, quantities, space between meals. It's just rarely done, but you can learn a lot there and teach a lot when you look at those details.
Well, and what I love to do is come back to the word experiment, but just to observe. Can we just take this week for you to just start paying attention to when you're hungry and if you're actually satisfied eating this food that you've been eating? Why are you eating this food? How are you eating this food? Are you eating when you're driving? Are you eating this food because someone said you should eat this food, or is it actually something that you enjoy? When you're with people in a restaurant, like, what are your tendencies? When people order appetizers, do you feel compelled to eat those too because they are? Do you know what to say when they offer it to you and you don't want it? Just observe. Just start taking notes. Just start noticing. Yeah, agree with you.
And I did that, Kori, as I said last week, when you said you need to sit down and eat your meals. I thought, okay, even though that's going to be painful for me, I'm going to create the mindset that I deserve to sit down and enjoy my food. So I sat at my conference table. I didn't do exactly what you said, because you said don't do anything else. Just think about the texture, the taste of the food. I at least opened up a book and I was reading for pleasure. It's kind of a social psych book, and just eating, enjoying sitting there.
So you were
And
mindfully reading. You weren't mindfully eating.
well, but I was at least not working and just like shoving food down my throat to get it over with. I was
Oh,
actually
good.
sitting down to eat a meal slowly. So it's, come on, give me
I'm
baby
getting
steps. Give me
it.
baby steps.
Okay, you sat down. That's awesome.
All right. So my point is taking exactly what you said, Kori, into consideration, which is to monitor those things, not just the numbers on your food log, not just the numbers on the scale, but what's happening with your enjoyment with food, your hunger between meals. Look for those things that make it easier for you to sustain your progress and then ultimately maintain your goals.
So not just the what, Joe, but the how.
Absolutely. And guys, we're going to say that's the end of this meal planning series, and we're going to do some more stuff. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you have, of course, like everybody on the internet says, like, share, give us some love on the net so that we can get this information out to more people. But we will see you guys next time, and thank you, Kori, for helping with this series.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks, guys.